The San Diego Comic-Con Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex may very well be the most divisive Hammond collection released to date. With the original Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus discontinued, those who want to add a Hammond Collection Rex to their collections face ever-mounting prices as the existing supply dwindles. The original Hammond Collection Rex retailed for roughly $50 USD, but now commands a price tag of upwards of $160. The price alone makes the San Diego Comic-Con Rex with its $85 price tag appealing, but is it actually worth it? This is a question that's a little difficult to answer. A Hammond Collection Rex has different worth to different collectors, as we all have our own subjective opinions on the matter. Additionally, in the week or so since the San Diego Comic-Con Bucks Rex released, I've seen an awful lot of hostility against anyone offering the slightest criticism of it, as if criticism somehow diminishes the worth or enjoyment of it by those people who like it. And that shouldn't be the case. One person's opinion shouldn't invalidate the opinion of anyone else, but additionally, we all live in the same objective reality whether we like it or not. And commenting on an objective feature of an inanimate object should not be cause for hostility. Now, I will never begrudge a person their opinion regardless of whether or not I agree with it. I've seen a lot of people say, I hate this figure, and I've seen a lot of people say, I love this figure. I don't take issue with either of those statements, because they're reflecting opinion. But when people say, this figure is good, or this figure is bad, well, that's where I'm going to need you to clarify if this figure is good, or if this figure is bad. Compared to what? A fork is great for eating a steak, but lousy for eating soup. And the reverse is true for a spoon. So to say that this figure is good or bad requires a qualifying statement of what the criteria are that you're evaluating it by. Now, different people have different standards when it comes to the Hammond collection. And I've been told before by some people that I expect too much. Now, after I outline my criteria, if they seem reasonable to you, then by all means stick around. If you think that my standards are too high, then this probably isn't the review for you. Mattel markets the Hammond Collection line as being premium quality collector figures, and has repeatedly doubled down on their screen accuracy, most recently with the True FX rebranding, which to be fair is absent from the packaging of the San Diego Comic-Con Rex. Nevertheless, by the standards set by Mattel, the entire Hammond Collection line should be on par with the likes of NECA, SH Figure Arts, McFarlane, Nanmu, Haya, Creative Beast Studios, etc. Now, at a glance, this is obviously not the case. Now, fortunately, my standard is considerably more forgiving than the standard that Mattel set for themselves, and it is simply this. How does the figure stack up compared to its Mattel mainline counterpart? And how does it stack up against the previous Hammond Collection releases? I'm not comparing this figure to any figure manufactured by any company besides Mattel, and I am not comparing it to custom figures that use Mattel figures as a base. If your standard is how does it stand up to the 2015 Hasbro figures, then these criteria may seem a bit harsh. If your standard is how it compares to other premium quality collector figures, then this standard may seem to set a low bar. It's common knowledge within the Jurassic community that Hasbro produced some of the objectively worst Jurassic figures in the franchise's 30-plus year history. Using this as a baseline is akin to comparing how your day is going based solely upon the worst day in your life. They're all better until you experience your new low point. On that same note, I feel that comparing the Hammond Collection line to other premium collector figures is probably like comparing a high school athlete to an Olympian. I'm not going to compare the Hammond Collection line to a standard that it can't possibly compete at, nor am I going to compare it to a vegetable. With my standard set, let's go ahead and get this figure out of the box so we can take a look at it and see just how this figure stacks up. Is it as good as everyone's saying, or is it as bad as we feared? On to the paint. My first thoughts regarding the coloration of this figure are, why the f*** is legs brown? This is a rhetorical question. I'm well aware of the justification that it's a callback to the Kenner Bull Tyrannosaurus. No, this figure is unambiguously intended to be the Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex from 1997's The Lost World. Between the official figure description by Mattel, the imagery and the Lost World logo plastered all over the packaging, there can be no doubt that this figure is supposed to be a representation of the Lost World Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex. Mattel has the entire reimagined line for nostalgic Kenner-inspired paint applications. Had they included the reimagined branding on the packaging, I would concede that this is the point, but they did not. To insist that this figure is based on the Kenner Bull T-Rex is just making excuses for a multi-billion-dollar corporation's lazy mistake. Admittedly, the Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex does have one of the more complex pigmentation and patterning within the Jurassic franchise. However, there are numerous reference materials available, and if your bread and butter is based upon making screen-accurate dinosaurs, it would be advantageous to familiarize yourself with those colors and patterns. The colors on the San Diego Comic-Con Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex are extremely saturated. While the coloration and patterns on the failed crowdfunder Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex are not completely accurate either, the colors are less saturated and the patterns are more naturally applied. The San Diego Comic-Con Buck features no paint application on the lower jaw whatsoever. There's a horizontal black stripe that runs from the back of the jaw to the shoulder, separating the green base color from the cream counter shading. This is not accurate patterning. On the rear portion of the torso, there's a lighter shade of green separating the darker green base color from the cream counter shading. When we reach the mid-torso joint, the lighter green color ends abruptly, creating a jarring, inconsistent appearance to the coloration of the figure. The arms, like the legs, are also a light brown tan color, and the top of the arm has an abrupt green t-shirt sleeve airbrushed onto it. A lighter green is used in place of a muted yellow on the antorbital fenestra as well as the dorsal striping. Unlike the original Hammond Collection Rex, the dew claw is not painted. The original Hammond Collection Rex also featured gratuitous speckling, which is entirely absent on the San Diego Comic-Con Bucks. There are several areas where the paint has been slopped onto the figure where it shouldn't be, and I'm unable to tell whether some of the yellow-green paint is a misguided attempt at a wash or if it's slop as well. All over, the patterns are poorly applied, and all of the striping is thick and blunt. None of the stripes terminate in a point. There's an excessive amount of airbrushed overspray on the ventral areas of the figure. The original Hammond Collection Rex had a combination of airbrushing, dry brushing, and speckles throughout the head and jaw. The Buck Tyrannosaurus has only airbrushing, and as previously mentioned, the jaw is completely devoid of paint. The colors are not accurate, as they should be much more subdued, and the base color of the arms and legs should also be green, not brown. The patterns are not entirely accurate, although had they been applied with more care and the correct colors, they would have been passable. The paint on the entire figure seems to have been haphazardly applied, resulting in an overall sloppy appearance. There's no shortage of paint applications or colors on the Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex, but due to the poor application, the entire figure has almost more of a camouflage patterned appearance than the distinctive striping that it should have. Had fewer colors been applied with more care, the general coloration and appearance would have been much closer to the Buck Tyrannosaurus on-screen counterpart. While not 100% accurate, the coloration of the wide-released Hammond Collection T-Rex, as well as the Outhouse Chaos Tyrannosaurus Rex, are both significantly more accurate to the film and have cleaner appearances than the Buck. Mattel has made the Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex twice before in the Legacy Collection. Once as a simple repaint of the Extreme Chompin Tyrannosaurus packaged with the infant, and once again, mostly the Extreme Chompin Tyrannosaurus, but with a new, albeit inaccurate, head sculpt. The coloration on both of the Legacy Collection releases was a duller, more subdued green, with clearly defined black dorsal stripes. They were both missing patterning on the legs, extensive counter shading, and only had very limited yellow coloration. These releases were far from perfect, but they were also mainline releases, not premium quality collector figures. The coloration on the Legacy Collection Buck Tyrannosaurus Rexes could be described as incomplete as opposed to inaccurate, and with additional paint applications could have been made significantly more accurate. The SDCC Buck does not need additional paint application. It just needs the paint application to be the correct color and applied in a tidier fashion. When compared to the other large dinosaurs within the Hammond collection, the lack of care in the paint application on the SDCC Buck becomes immediately apparent. The other figures feature combinations of clearly defined sharp stripes and patterns, dry brushing, in some cases washes, and while in certain cases there may be missing coloration like the blue of the Spinosaurus's sail, or also in the case of the Spinosaurus, a closer semblance to the coloration of a marquette as opposed to the on-screen version, the amount of care in the application of the colors and patterns is notably superior to what we see on the SDCC Buck. From the first images released of the SDCC Buck a month ago, it was apparent that it was the same sculpt as the original Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was released 3 years ago, although it now featured a new head sculpt as well as more proportionately accurate feet. However, there was an additional improvement that wasn't obvious in the original images. The internal mechanism of the tail has been updated. It now features a much wider range of motion and increased posability, and when posed is much more capable of holding that pose. The now more proportionate feet also feature slightly sharper toe claws. They're not on par with the Giganotosaurus or Spinosaurus, but they're a much more reasonable size than the infamous clown shoes of the original Hammond Collection Rex. The new head sculpt is very obviously the Lost World Buck. It features additional detail on the jaw and more pronounced brow ridges and nostrils, as well as the Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex's signature snoot scars, although they are unpainted. The glass eyes are the same glass eyes featured on the second batch of the original Hammond Collection Rex. They're an improvement over the eyes of the first batch released, and a vast improvement over the Outhouse Chaos Tyrannosaurus. However, while the glass eyes have been making marginal improvements with each subsequent release, they have never, and I suspect will never be, Mattel's strong suit. There's a very specific angle, under very specific lighting conditions, at which they appear vibrant and lifelike. Any other angle and any other light, and it's Village of the Damned. Included with the new head sculpt are the updated, sharper teeth. They're pointy, but harmless, and they're a wonderful improvement over the original Rex. Unlike the original Rex, however, they don't feature a wash. The inside of the mouth is painted, unlike the original Rex, and therefore looks much better. The buccal flaps of the original Tyrannosaurus were made from a soft rubber that was prone to tearing and, under some conditions, crumbling. The subsequent large Hammond Collection theropods featured an updated material on the buccal flaps that is both more durable and has much more elasticity. I am sorry to report, but the SDCC Buck Tyrannosaurus appears to feature the original buccal flap material of the original Rex, which does give me some concern for the longevity of the figure. Beyond the feet, head, and tail, there are no alterations or improvements over the original Tyrannosaurus Rex. It features all of the same joints, articulation, and proportions. The claws of the forelimb are blunt, unlike the sharper but rubbery claws found on the other large Hammond Collection releases. The hips are quite wide, and most notably, it features the mid-torso joint. Mattel made the right move ditching the mid-torso joint on the larger Hammond Collection figures after the original Rex. I've handled dozens of Hammond Collection Rexes. Some of them feature firm joints that'll hold a pose. Others are loose, causing the entire front of the figure to hang and look exhausted. For now, the mid-torso joint on my San Diego Comic-Con Buck Rex appears to be firm, but my primary complaint about the mid-torso joint is how unnaturally it breaks up the continuity of the sculpt. There are other manufacturers who have successfully integrated a mid-torso joint into their figures. Mattel is not one of them, and as mentioned in the paint segment of this video, the paint between the torso segments does not line up, and the yellowy green ends very abruptly. When the original Hammond Collection Rex released 3 years ago, it was the first large Hammond Collection figure, and while the glass eyes were dicey and some of the proportions were an objective step backwards from some of the mainline figures, noticeably the hips and the feet, it did feature, at the time, unprecedented articulation. I felt like the improved articulation was worth the sacrificed proportions and the iffy glass eye. And being the first large Hammond Collection figure, there was really nothing to compare it against, at least not within the Hammond Collection. In the ensuing years, more large Hammond Collection releases followed, and with the release of the Giganotosaurus, Mattel showed us just what they're capable of. It had sharp claws and teeth, crisp sculpted detail, improved materials, clean and detailed paintwork. Hell, it even had painted dew claws. The difference in quality between the original Tyrannosaurus and the Giganotosaurus is night and day, and each subsequent large Hammond Collection figure has improved upon this. The paintwork on the SDCC Buck Rex is bad. Put your SDCC Buck Rex next to any other large Hammond Collection figure, and it is immediately apparent just how sloppy the paintwork is. There's no justifying that. Now, I've heard some people say that they like the paint on the Buck T-Rex, and that's fine, that's your opinion. But the quality of the paintwork is objectively worse than any other large Hammond Collection release. And if you deny that, you're either blind or dishonest. But my main criticism is this. The Hammond Collection Rex was pretty good 3 years ago, but that was 3 years ago. You can have a kid who's smart as a tack and tests at the top of their class in 3rd grade, but 3 years later, when they're in 6th grade and they're still testing at a 3rd grade level, that's a problem. And that is the San Diego Comic-Con Buck Rex's problem. You can love your idiot child, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not a passing grade. The Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex is too little, too late. Had it been released 3 years ago, shortly after the original Tyrannosaurus Rex, there wouldn't have been 3 years of improvements to compare it against. When the SDCC Buck Rex is placed next to the other large Hammond collection figures, it almost doesn't even appear to be in the same lineup. Massive improvements have been made, and the SDCC Rex is 85 to 90% a recycled 3-year-old figure, but with the worst paint application we've seen on a large Hammond collection figure yet. Giving this thing an overall score of 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 is delusional. At best, I would give this thing a 5 out of 10. To deny how objectively bad this figure is for the Hammond collection in 2025 is to deny that any of the large Hammond collection figures have been an improvement since the original Tyrannosaurus Rex. And if you deny that, you're just not being honest with yourself or anyone else. By the previously established criteria in this video, there's just no way this Buck Rex is getting a passing grade. But what's my opinion? My opinion is that it needs work, but I like it. Fortunately, I can do the work. However, not everyone can do the work that this figure so desperately needs in order to live up to the standard of a Hammond Collection large theropod in 2025. And that's what's so frustrating about it. So many people were so excited to get a Hammond Collection Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex that, at least during the honeymoon phase, they're completely oblivious to its many and obvious flaws. Or maybe it's not being oblivious, maybe it's denial, and maybe that's what's behind all of the hostility towards anyone who has any criticism towards it, no matter how valid. The point is, I'm okay with bad figures, because I can remedy some of their shortcomings. But I think that those who can't or don't modify their figures also deserve to have a good Hammond Collection Buck, not a lazy cash grab. And I don't know how we can call this anything but that. The sculpt is outdated, the paint is bad, and the supply was very limited, and many people were unable to get this. Everything about this Tyrannosaurus Rex seems to have been very poorly handled. From its original inclusion as an unlockable tier during the poorly handled crowdfunder of the Jurassic Park gates, to its current, very limited release as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, Mattel is continually dangling the prospect of a Hammond Collection Buck Tyrannosaurus Rex over the heads of fans, but for whatever reason, they seem unwilling to provide a wide release of one. Like many Jurassic fans, the original Jurassic Park was my favorite, and with the exception of the omission of a wide-release Donald Gennaro figure, I am very satisfied with all of the human and dinosaur characters from the first Jurassic Park film that Mattel has produced. Now, I would love a resculpt of a Hammond Collection Jurassic Park 1 Tyrannosaurus, but overall the handling of the original film by Mattel has left me very satisfied, and they've covered the dinosaurs and human characters quite thoroughly. But for whatever reason, they won't make the same commitment to the Lost World. If you've made it this far into the video, I can only assume that you think that my criteria for judging this thing are reasonable. If not, you're either a masochist or a troll. If you're a masochist, then I hope that this video was sufficiently painful enough to satisfy you. Different strokes for different folks, man. And if you're a troll, then I assume that you can find your name somewhere on this list. I hope that this review is a nice change from everyone gushing over this thing. I don't really like to dwell on divisive shit, but way too many people are acting like this is the best thing since sliced bread. Maybe it's a self-esteem thing, but you all deserve more than the bare minimum. Well, thanks for watching this crap. Next week we'll do an actual repaint video again. Join me 1 week from today. We are going to paint El Chupacabra. Throw it on.